I always enjoyed doing something new. I really do. What I got here is I have a 2016 Chevy Cruze. It's got the turbo 1.4 liter or whatever it is. Doesn't really matter, but I got to do a water pump on it. It came in with a coolant leak, and it's obviously a water pump. I could tell just when I had it running and backing in. You can actually see it dripping off the bottom of the pulley. So I'm going to do that. I'm actually going to, it's now the end of the day, and I'm going to wind up doing this first thing in the morning. But I figured I'd show you right now what I got here. So this right here, and the water pump is externally belt driven right there. And what motor is this thing? Does it even say? It's a 2016, it's a 1.4 liter. Now on this, just so you guys know, on Chevy Cruzes, anything that has this plastic intake basically, or plastic valve cover. The plastic valve cover, he had an oil leak from the gasket. And I put this on, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months ago maybe. Had a valve cover gasket leak. He wanted to put just a gasket in it. And I had said, no, put a valve cover on it because they warp. And he insisted, nope, we're going to put a valve cover gasket on it. I don't want to spend the money for a cover. Okay. Well, here's the deal. If it leaks again, I'm not warrantying it. Because I'm telling you, you need a valve cover. Okay, no problem. We put a valve cover gasket on it. Guess what? Within a month, he came back. It's leaking. Yeah, no kidding. I told you. They warp. So you could buy them. This is a Dorman. You can get them from Dorman. You can get them from the dealer. The dealer is actually not that much more money than the Dorman piece. The Dorman fits absolutely fine. I've used both. They both fit absolutely fine. I almost wonder if Dorman is a factory piece. It could be, might not be, I don't know. But I've used both. There's another reason too. On these things, they have, underneath this cover here, this thing here is the PCV system in this motor. And they'll actually set codes. I forgot what the code is, in all honesty. But there's a code, if you look it up, and it'll tell you, check the PCV system. And it has a tendency to go bad inside the valve cover. So that's another reason you may as well just put a valve cover on it, because you can't service it. It's part of the valve cover. But anyway, so let's see what else. The other thing too is these cooler necks down here. A lot of newer cars use a neck like this that has the thermostat housing in it, bolts to the side of the head. A lot of newer vehicles, 4-cylinders, use the same type of setup. And it seems to be a common problem on a lot of different vehicles. Well, I've already replaced it on this one. This car's been pretty trouble-free except for those 2 items. And now it's got the water pump leak. Like I said, there's a water pump there. It doesn't look terrible to change. It's got a weird tensioner down there. Like I said, I've never done one, so I'm going to be putting a belt and a tensioner on this. And I'm going to be doing this in the morning. Let's see. I'm going to take this air box assembly out. You see it runs down here to the turbo. But I'm going to get that out of the way. It looks like obviously I'm going to have to take that motor mount bracket out of the way. So anyway, that should be about it. So I think I'm going to pack it up for tonight, and I'm going to get in on this in the morning. So, all right, let's do that. Welcome back. So here we go, next morning, and I have the airbox out of the way. Basically, it's just one clamp, and then I pulled up on it, and it uses like rubber bushings to like hold it down in place. I snap in over here and over here. But it looks like I got the 3 bolts there to hold the motor mount on. 1 bolt there, 1 bolt there, and 1 nut there, and that top bracket will come out. I'm not sure if I got to support the motor or not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up those 3 bolts to see how far this motor starts to drop and see if I need to do that. Because I got 1 engine mount there and 1 in the back. Where is it? Right there. And then I got the tranny mount, so it may not drop all that much. So let me see. Let me start taking this mount out. And there we go. I took the 3 bolts out, and it did drop. You see it dropped a bit. So I'm going to have to, jack the motor up a little bit when I go to put that back together. But it didn't drop a lot, so it's really not a big deal. So now I'm just going to take this mount out, and then I have access to the pump. The new pump came, and I'm going to have to switch over this housing. I'm assuming it's a thermostat housing. I'm not sure, but it's got 3 bolts to it. So I'm going to have to take this air inlet hose off just to get a little better access to it. And it really doesn't look terrible, but let's keep going because obviously I got to take this section of bracket out. Well, let me do that. So here's a new pump that's going to go on. And as you can see, the thermostat housing, or that water neck out housing, I believe it's a thermostat. I won't know until I get it apart. But it's right down there. So I got the top bolt out that went in here, but you can see my extension on the bottom bolt there. So that's a little bit of a pain to get to. And then that one's pretty easy. And they're E-sockets, or E-bolts, inverted Torx. So I just wanted you to see that. So I'm going to get that off now. I wound up having to put it up in the air, take the shield here and move it out of the way, because that bracket has one bolt right down there. And there you can see that tensioner. It's kind of an interesting tensioner. I never really paid attention to that before. And GM likes using these inverted Torx bolts on a lot of things. So basically I've got to get that out. Once that's out, then I can take the bracket out. And you can look up there and you can actually see the bottom of that water neck right there, where I have it separated. Okay, let's keep going. And there's the bracket off. Now, you got to pull the bolts out. You got to maneuver it in such a way that you can get the bolts past the frame. Basically tilt it and stuff like that, because otherwise it won't come out. I did notice, I realize now, I accidentally took the bolt out for the pivot portion of the tensioner. I mistakenly thought it was part of the that bracket. So no big deal. I still got to put it back together, or I've got to put that back in there. That's this bolt here. So if you're ever doing one, just this bolt that's below this top bolt of the bracket, you don't have to take that out. I mistakenly took it out. And let's see, when you loosen up the water pump, leave the belt and the tension and everything else on it, and then crack the bolts free. Because once you take the belt off, you have nothing to tension it. You have to, basically bound it up with like a pry bar or something. It's just easier to leave the belt on, and then he's break free. I already did that. As you see, it's coming out. So basically now, with that hooked back up, I just got to take the bolts out for the water pump, and you can see they're all those inverted Torx. Got the hose off the back, the thermostat housing disconnected in the front. I got another thermostat coming for this too. May as well put one in while I got it apart. Yeah, I think that's it. I may disconnect the cam sensor here just to be on the safe side so I don't accidentally snap off the end of it, because anything can happen. I'd rather it not happen while I'm doing this. And there you go, it's off. I mean, that really was not that bad. I mean, even with filming, it didn't even take me an hour. So, to get to this point. So, anyway, let me, I'm actually going to exchange that water pump for another one. There's a different water pump that they sell that actually comes with the thermostat. So, I got that one coming, and it's the same price. Why they didn't offer it to me in the first place, I have no idea. So, but anyway, let me just get this out. I gotta get that all cleaned up and ready for the new pump. Now, one thing to consider, the original, when you're changing the original, they use this very, very thin aluminum gasket with sealer on both sides. It's probably impregnated with it. But, so you don't go and start cleaning it off and think you actually clean that surface off, because you didn't. You have that surface there that you have to clean off, so just keep in mind. So now when you're cleaning that gasket surface, use Scotch-Brite pads. Don't use sandpaper unless you got a super fine sandpaper, because the sandpaper, if you use that, it can actually leave swirl marks or actually scores in the aluminum from the grit. So, and I've seen people do it, and that's an avenue for a leak. That's why I use this stuff and brake clean, and it comes out perfect. So the guy at the parts store, he kind of misspoke. The thermostat housing with the thermostat in it and the coolant temperature sensor is pretty much the same price as a water pump. He told me it came as a water pump and a thermostat housing, but it's two separate pieces. So I mean, it adds however much more to the bill, but you know what? It's the same labor because I have it apart anyway. So we're going to replace that. Let me just show you what it is. So here it is. Here's the whole housing with the thermostat installed, and now basically I'm just going to throw that on a pump and then install the whole thing. And there you go too. You can see how nice and clean that came out with the Scotch-Brite pad. It looks good now. Alright, so we're going to get ready to install everything. Alright, so interesting thing to note here, if you look, here's the old thermostat housing. Here is the new thermostat housing. Now, if you look, see these tabs here, these plastic tabs? This plate locks into those tabs and holds spring pressure on the thermostat. That plate is missing. It's not even here. And here's the weird thing. This goes into the water pump, this section. So, looking at the old water pump, where did that plate go? I don't see it anywhere. I don't see any evidence of it hitting the impeller. It's not inside there, so where is it? It's not inside the motor either. It's just really, really strange. It didn't fall out when I opened it up. So was somebody else in there and just put it back together like that? I don't know. I don't know. Very, 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 very strange. I did look inside the block and everything else, you know, down here. You know, in the water jacket opening. I mean, but I see no signs of a metal plate hitting anything. You'd think it would have done a tremendous amount of damage in there, but I see nothing. Very, very odd. All right, let me keep going. So now the pump is in place, and I used a regular clamp on that hose because I had one of those squeeze clamps, and it's kind of been a pain in the neck spot. It was easy getting off because I had the, you know, didn't have the pump on at the time. But anyway, so the hose is one of those click type. It's got that big clip on the outside. So there again, there's transmission assembly lube. So just, there we go, and it's on. So transmission assembly lube just makes life a whole lot easier. And like I said, plus it'll break down and melt at low temperatures. So now, don't want to forget that. So now basically it's just reverse procedure to install. Got to hook the hose up in the back. That one I'll leave a squeeze clamp on where it goes there because it's just easy to get to. But yeah, that's kind of it. So let me just keep going. If I can run across anything of interest, I'll show you. So there it is. It's all together. It really wasn't that bad. I mean, it's a pretty simple water pump. Actually, I got everything hooked up. I actually got coolant in it right now. I'm letting it burp out a little bit. If I'm not mistaken, this thing actually bleeds itself out pretty well. So that's the only reason I'm doing it this way. Otherwise, I would have used a funnel or vacuum fill or something like that. But so yeah, you can see the clamp down there. So everything's good. Everything's in place. The motor mount bolts are tight. I did have to jack the motor up slightly just to catch those 3 motor mount bolts there and then put everything back in place. So let me finish getting coolant in this thing, and then I'm going to run it down the road and make sure everything's good. All right, a bit odd. So I started up the Cruze, and the cooling fan comes right on. I'm like, okay. I couldn't remember if I had a check engine light, but I checked, there's no check engine light. All right. AC's not on, nothing's on. All right, I shut it off, I restart it, cooling fan comes right on, full blast. Okay. I hooked the scanner up to it just out of curiosity, and it set all sorts of codes for the mass air meter, intake air temperature sensor, which is in the mass air meter, and stuff like that. So as a default, with those codes, it will throw the fan on because it doesn't know what the temperature is. So now, when I did all the work, yeah, I disconnected the mass air meter, but the key was off. So why did it set codes? That's very odd. The key was off the whole time. The key was on the seat. So why would it set codes? I don't know. Just odd. Alright, well, I'm purging the air out of it, and then I'm going to road test it. Alright, so I'm happy with the way that turned out. I just took it for a bit of a road test. I'm just sitting in the car enjoying some AC because it is hot and humid here today. Yeah, so that's it. Hope you got something out of that. If you could, hit that like button. If you could, please subscribe. That's it for now. Tell your friends to subscribe too. Really help me out. Alright guys, have a great day. Keep wrenching.